we asked the Greek people in this survey, the top 3 strategic changes that they expect to see is actually organizational restructuring. I guess that's not a big surprise. And of course, that's also downsizing, I think, with other words, but that's what we understand about the organizational restructuring. And new product launches, I think that's a bit surprisingly, actually. And implementation of new technology. And, okay, let's move on. And I think that what we found out about the survey is that only 22 in Greece and 20% in EMEA at a whole realizes that the change processes are successful. So that's actually less than 1/4 of the people that we have asked that they actually went through these all kinds of strategic change in a sort of very successful, effective, powerful way. I guess that's not a bit unlike what you have commented on. And of course, it's the opinion of their own. And what is it? I mean, what is in a successful change? Exactly like you said, that people accept it, they might not like it, that we have a plan in place, that we have a communication plan in place, that we have involved people, that we know that our middle management are able to explain the changes, that everybody actually realizes and understand what does it mean to me. So these are some of the factors that we have asked for in order to find out if they think they are successful or not. And as you said, I mean, having a plan in place is changing so fast and rapidly that we have to adjust all the time. And I think that might sometimes be very confusing for the organization and the employees and the leaders. And that might also be a part of why we got these pretty bad answers and room for improvement, I would say. Okay, so let's move on. And about the plan, we also saw that the plan does have an effect. That 44 of the European companies said yes, we had a plan in place at execution, and only 19% of the Greek people or the HR and communications people said. And the ones that had no plan in place was actually 32. And then there was, of course, you can say that more or less you had a plan in place. But again, I think that we're very good at having a plan in place when we do crisis, when we do new launches and so on. Sometimes it is. But the big strategic change projects is not always executed on the basis of a plan. So I think there's some improvement to do there, and also to be able to cope with the plan that is going to change and differs on the way. Yes? And this is also, I think, what you were translating to me. That when should employees hear about the change? I mean, those are the black ones. When do we believe, as communicators or HR people, that our employees and middle managers and leaders should hear about the plan? Well, when we do set the goal, or we plan and resource, and not only at execution, and of course then also on the ongoing level. And you can see the blue ones are actually our own judgment on how well we are doing. And we also know by, I think it was in the opening remarks, that there was 70% of changes are not successful or are failing. And I think a lot of that is, of course, because we don't involve people in time, and therefore they don't get it, they don't understand it. But also, we are not very good at the following up. So another survey says that 4 out of 5 projects fails because we don't pay any attention, and the leadership doesn't pay any attention, and there's always another change to come. So if I just hide and don't pay any attention, it might pass where I am. And of course we think like that, because it's tough to cope with. So this really shows that we do a lot on the execution part. This is the town hall meetings. This is where we actually stand up and talk about the change, the big bang, as we also call it. And then we don't always get people with us, and we are not maybe as good as we're supposed to be on the following up part. Yes? And this is, you can just do one more. So engaging people, of course, is the cornerstone of every success change process. So the companies that said that they had handling changes very effectively actually have been having activities in all 4 phases. And the ones that is more as an average level is more doesn't involve people early enough and not just that good at follow-up. I think it's the same one as the previous slides. And then I used to show it in this way because it becomes even more clear to us that I'm so sorry, but changes are never linear. And what we do, if you just press on, we always tend to use a lot of resources, especially I guess maybe you did so on the vision mission. If it's a positive change, we tend to use all our efforts on the Big Bang, and now you should see, and blah, 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 blah. And then I just worked recently actually for a very big energy company. And last summer they launched a new strategy, and they did town hall meetings, they did webcasts, they followed up on whoever visited the websites and blah, 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 and everything was really, really successful. And then afterwards they sort of didn't do anything. And today only like 1/3 of, they just did an employee survey, and only 1/3 actually knows or remembers what was in the strategy. So I mean, you can use a lot of efforts on launching and the Big Bang, but don't do that if you don't use as many resources on the following up part. And the following up part, if you just press, is where we need our mid-level managers or first-line managers, because we always have these blobs on the way. You know, we always think, yes, now we are going to do this differently, and then we sort of lose momentum. But then we have to continue to communicate and involve and work with it, and the ones that we really need there, because I think what you also said in your opening remarks is that we don't trust our CEO. My employees in Denmark do not trust our global CEO. Who do they trust most? They trust me. So if I say something completely different to what he says, they believe in what I say. So I think that's also where some of the companies fail, that we need the first-line managers. They have the answers. I don't know if in you said that everybody accepts the changes in your company. And if I have questions, do I go and ask the CEO, or do I raise them on the internet, or do I ask them in a blog or something like that? No, I don't. I ask my first-line managers, or I ask my colleague. So I think that we really need to use them as a very, very important communication channel whenever we go through changes. And the survey also showed that the companies that are very good at having this daily dialogue at a certain level, they are a lot better to cope with all the many changes that will come. Because if you train your middle managers, and you probably do, and they have the tools, and they know what to do whenever a new change is coming, because they have tried it many more times. And middle managers, they have such a tough job. They have to do everything. They have to run the business. They have to be fantastic communicators. They have to be fantastic HR people. So of course they need some guidance and some tools to be able to cope with all these changes and give the answers, or have the dialogue, and maybe not have the answers, but be honest enough to say so. So this is where we try to help in keeping momentum and use different channels. Then is I guess you have a bit of a burning platform here today in Greece, I guess. And burning platforms, I think, we used to communicate in terms of doing changes, because if we could just communicate to our employees that we're having a burning platform, in the sort of old theory, we knew that people will change, that they will move. If the ground is burning, of course we'll move. But the problem is, you have, I don't know how many, 4 or 5 burning platforms in your company. So I mean, and then we start not to trust the burning platforms. We cannot use them as a communication tool anymore. We used to. So instead, we are talking a lot more about to create an appealing journey instead. And I think you also said it, that we have to get into the minds and the hearts of our people. We want, and especially in restructuring and downsizing, we tend to focus a lot on the people that we might have to let go, or the negative communications. Of course, we need to handle that. But we also need to focus on the talent and the people that we want to be to stay and be a part of the journey. So at the same time, maybe when you have to communicate about your restructuring or maybe some layoffs or whatever, you might have to re-communicate about that we still have this direction and we still have this mission, vision, or whatever it is that we are aiming for. Because we want them on this journey. We want to communicate to them so that they want to be a part of the journey. And how do we do that then? Okay, so some of the barriers to successful change, if you ask at the EMEA level, is of course that the employees are not always involved in the process, that there's not enough communication during the change process. I think we as communicators, and especially also CEOs, they are like, well, I've said it, so they have heard it. Why bother? I mean, I cannot keep repeating myself. Yes, you can, and you should do it during the whole process. Communication at all different levels, because we don't want to hear it and we forget, and we have to keep the momentum. And we can help with that. And of course, there's also often a lot of resistance to change within the business. That's not the case with you in your company. But why do we resist to change? Because we don't understand it, or we don't get it, or we haven't had a chance to talk about it or to have a dialogue about it. That's often why. It's not because we don't want to change as people. I said that it was difficult, but of course we can see the point in changing. But the resistance often comes because we don't understand. We haven't had the possibility to talk to anybody about it. We didn't really get why, and why now, and what does it mean to this part of the company. So I think that's also some of it. And then if you look at Greece, actually this is a very high number, and that's for Greece and none of the other markets. The top management don't share information. 59% of the people we asked say that this is a barrier to successful change. I don't know why they are hiding it. But a lot of top management ask me, well, we are now developing a new strategy and we are finding out how we should cope with this decreasing market. And we have been developing this new strategy. When should I communicate it? Now, I always say, I mean, share, be open. Because everybody wants to hear. And everybody has, of course, sometimes you have to be cautious about your investors or something like that. Of course, I know that. But I think most of the time, it's better to share than not to share. I mean, you might get some great input. So why don't share? And some of the similar ones, middlemen are not always involved in the process. That's even more important than the employees, because they are the ones that we need to continue the process. And not always functions are involved, and employees. What we have developed upon this study is what we call the change communication model. So if you just help me here. And what we found out is that, and of course that's not the case in any of your companies, but a lot of the times, especially in bigger global companies, you tend to use a lot of efforts and resources on the internal communication. And that, of course, is the town hall meetings, the internet, the newsletter, the CEO. A lot of efforts on the communications part, on materials, and on the one-way communications, but we're not good enough in helping and supporting and training the mid-level managers. And they are the ones that need to have, because they have the answers for the employees, they need to have the dialogue and the involvement in terms of us as human beings to accept the change. So I don't know if that makes sense to you, but that's an overview also to check all our activities. Do we have activities in all these different phases or boxes, or do we focus especially on one of them? And the focus from the survey says that still we do mostly of the internal communication and one way of communication.